Okay, fellow babies, welcome back to Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. We are thankful if you are a Patreon patron. We appreciate your support. We are very thankful if you're a YouTube subscriber. That also helps pay the bills, and you're getting the show real time if you do either of those two things. At a minimum, if you have an Amazon Prime account, please link that to your Twitch Prime account. We get paid a couple bucks a month for the privilege. You have to renew that, so please check out the instructions in the show description and it'll tell you how to do that. If you don't have any of those things, which is hard to believe anybody's not an Amazon customer, but if you don't have any of those things, please follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. Today's Patreon question from Jerome Archambault. Rumors have been swirling about a PS5 Pro coming to the market fairly soon. How do you see mid-cycle console refreshes happening with PS5 and Xbox Series consoles still so hard to find? Will they happen at all? Could this be a way to increase the price of the console to counteract inflation and increase production costs? Why isn't the cost of consoles increased like everything else? Remember that Sony is a Japanese company, and the vast majority of PlayStations are sold outside of Japan. The yen is at nearly an all-time low against the dollar right now. I think it's back down to like 102 or something. And the dollar is super, super strong. So Sony's actually making a ton of money right now on selling the PlayStations in the US and Europe. The euro's weak against the dollar as well, but they're making more money than they expected to make. As far as a console refresh, I've never seen a console price go up ever in the history of consoles. Now, admittedly, we've never been in an inflationary environment since consoles were invented. Nintendo, the NES came out in 1985, and the last time we really had rampant inflation was like 80, 82. So we haven't been there, but component costs aren't rising that much. What's happening is that the chipsets used to make the consoles are somewhat unique. Not the AMD chipsets. Those are custom for the console, and AMD's cranking them out. It's the Bluetooth chipsets, it's the Wi-Fi chipsets, it's stuff that powers your controller and allows you to connect everything. Those are custom and they're supply constrained, and the price isn't going up. The reason that you have so few consoles is they're just hard to get. The manufacturing has been constrained. And a lot of that is because China shut down recently for Omicron, and they're opening back up again. So I think that relaxes. As far as a mid-cycle console refresh, it's time for a console refresh. Typically when you get them, there's only one of two things happening. They add stuff to the console because the cost has come down to produce the console. So typically the components go down over time because they've made so many of them that you now leverage the cost of the facility, and it's pretty easy to make the same stuff. And so back in the day, you would see the hard drives go from 60 gigabytes to 120 to 500 to a terabyte. So each successive mid-cycle upgrade got a bigger hard drive for the same price. So more stuff, same price. Now you're looking at more like solid state drives, which solid state memory is still expensive, but relative to where it was 5 years ago, significantly cheaper. I don't know what they're gonna do. I doubt you're gonna get an improvement in graphics. Like, I don't think that we just need anything better than 4K. So I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be features and functionality, and more likely than not, some massive 2 terabyte flash memory, built in, something like that. But I don't know that really they can improve on these consoles enough to make anybody throw away their old one and buy a new one. It's really now intended just for new purchasers to get more bang for their buck, and it's also intended to keep the price the same. So I think we're kind of looking at $400 consoles for a long time. I don't think that's going to change. The thing that really is interesting is Sony is smart, so is Microsoft. They're fine selling the same number of consoles for 7 years. Like, they don't need, it's not easy for them to sell 25 million a year, then 20, then 15, then 10. They'd rather sell 15 a year forever. And that's kind of where we are. I think Sony said 18 this year. So we're kind of at that steady state 18, which is lower than peak PS4 sales. I know Sony said they've sold more consoles on PS5 than any console in history. They would rather sell 18 million a year in perpetuity, and that's kind of how they're going to handle mid-cycle upgrades to keep demand high by giving you more stuff. And it's sort of like, televisions get better and better and better. Everything gets better over time. So yes, I think that'll happen. I don't think you're going to get supply relaxation on consoles this year. I don't think it improves. And there's a bunch of moving parts going on. The strong dollar is actually a problem. But Chinese manufacturing was shut down for the first 4 or 5 months of 2022. Shipping is still a problem. It's now gone from port capacity to offload containers. Now it's trucking capacity to get empty containers back to the port. So if you go out, if Shane and I walk out to the corner and we look out at the ocean and we see all the empty tankers out there, there's tons of them, cargo ships, they're all empty. They all have no containers on them. And 6 months ago, there was a line 20 miles long of container ships full of containers. Now there's a line of container ships empty, waiting to pick up empty containers or full containers with U.S. exports and take them back to China. And the strong dollar, I know I'm giving you guys an economics lesson, the strong dollar means that U.S. goods cost more in foreign currency, so people aren't importing from the U.S. as much as they were before. We're not exporting as much, which means those containers aren't filling up. So it's just a really delicate balance to get all global supply chain to work, because everybody manages all their inventory just in time. And when you get the dollar spiking, you get people not buying as much in U.S. goods. If you look at the U.S. recession, the one that we're in right now, if you look at the components of the economy, consumption's up, government spending is up, investment is up, exports are down. And exports are down enough to throw everything into negative territory. And the reason exports are down is supply chain and dollar. The U.S. dollar is too strong. So that's a long answer for it's not going to fix this year. And Shane and I had this talk. They're going to blame Biden. It's not Biden's fault. A strong dollar is actually really good because it attracts foreign investment, and foreign investment creates jobs, and foreign investment in the U.S. economy means we all have more money to spend. And so, again, Biden's not responsible for food prices. That's Russia, Ukraine. You probably didn't know this, but Ukraine and Russia produce 1/3 of the wheat consumed on the planet. Who knew that, right? And apparently, I just heard this, there's 20 million tons of grain sitting in warehouses in Ukraine that can't ship out because of the Russians. So Europe is dying and not getting food, and that causes global food prices to go up. So if Russia wasn't in Ukraine, then inflation would end kind of overnight. Crazy. Not Biden's fault, not Trump's fault. It's Putin's fault. So this isn't a U.S. political issue, but it's global. And so, no, I don't think PlayStation gets back in supply-demand balance this year, period. But they'll launch a new model next year to keep the price the same and give consumers something new to buy. And that's cool. Thanks for joining us on Pachter Factor. We are thankful if you are a Patreon patron. Appreciate the patronage. We are thankful if you have linked your Twitch Prime account to your Amazon Prime account. We get paid for that. We are thankful if you're a YouTube subscriber. And if you're YouTube or Patreon, you're getting this real time. If you aren't paying for Patreon or paying as a YouTube subscriber, you have to wait a week to get the content for free. So it's a week late, and obviously all my opinions change every week. But at least follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. We'll see you next week.